No, Jenna. I'm not buying AD's claim. And I like and support Anthony Davis, but this is his most ridiculous public statement since he claimed when he wore the "That's All Folks" shirt to his last game in New Orleans that he doesn't pick out his own clothing. Anthony, when the season was halted, LeBron was playing his best basketball since 2018. Back-to-back Western Conference Player of the Month. Giannis had just gotten dinged up and hurt. The Clippers, Kawhi was still load managing and they hadn't figured out their rotation. Meanwhile, the Lakers were as healthy, playing their best basketball of the year, and they were about to be able to cash in what they had worked for all year, Antoine, which was home court advantage. Now, nobody has home court advantage. Everyone else that was banged up gets healthier. Giannis will be healthy. Kawhi, we know how desperately important rest is to him. He's fully rested. And the Lakers lost Avery Bradley. So I still think they're the favorites. But the idea, Antoine, that it's gotten easier, that they're in a better position, to me goes against the documented historical record here.
Well, I think for AD, it's a little different for him. He got healthy. You got to think about it. He was the one guy that's been out a couple games throughout the season. So I think he feels good about his body. He's finally probably 100%. But they did not get better, Nick. I have to agree with you. They're missing Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley is going to be a huge miss for them if he's not going to be able to play. I know they picked up J.R. Smith, but he's no Avery Bradley when you think about what he's going to give them defensively. So, and they're playing their best basketball. LeBron was in a great groove. They had just beaten the Clippers and Milwaukee in the same week. LeBron James is leading the league in assists. It just was too many positive things going well for the Lakers. Now you got to kind of try to jumpstart this thing again without a key quality player. And out Dwight Howard, too. Dwight Howard was a big part of what you've accomplished there as well. So the Lakers are going to be in a little trouble. But if it's one guy that you can count on that can get them back mentally and get them refocused, it's LeBron James.
But go ahead. It certainly seems like the teams can go both ways on this. Some benefit by getting the rest, players that were banged up, dinged up like Anthony Davis was, the wrist, the knee, the shoulder, all of it. And then there's other teams that they had their momentum halted. And it seems like the Lakers either benefit or didn't benefit kind of on both sides of this. Where do you think they fall? Were they in better shape before, or are they going to be in better shape now? They are all veterans on this team, and they are all well-rested and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony talked about, like, health, right? Obviously, the healthiest team is going to win. Ibaka says the Raps are healthy. They had a ton of injuries. Kemba says his knee is healed, so the Celtics are going to be good. Ben Simmons says he's back and better than ever. So maybe, who knows what the Sixers are going to do. 29-2 at home, by the way, so they're the best team in the league. They can go and make a run. But, Antoine, I got a question for you, because another part of Anthony Davis's quote I thought was really interesting. If you could put it up. He said, if you're coming, this is about playing with no fans. If you're coming out of having a bad game, there's not going to be fans there trying to get you going. You're going to have, as we say on the team, bring your own energy. We're going to have to make sure that we do that every night, especially with no fans. I think we're motivated as a team and self-motivated to win, but it's definitely going to be different for all of us. So, Antoine, the question for you is that LeBron's job, or is the energy guy supposed to be someone else on the team? So, like, with the Warriors, it always feels like it's Draymond or like Patrick Beverley. Is that something LeBron's going to have to do? And the teams that you played for, was that your job, or was that like, he's the energy guy, he's the guy who's going to set the tone?
Well, actually, it's going to be the guys are going to have to lock in and take it like summer basketball. You're going to have to come focused. And, you know, I come from Chicago, we played a ton of competitive basketball games where there's no fans in there. You got to come self-motivated every day and come to play competitive pickup basketball. And I don't know if that's going to come from LeBron. You know LeBron's going to be focused, but I think Frank Vogel, the energy's got to be always up and high. But the one thing the Lakers do have an advantage about is their roster. If you look at their roster, you got guys like Rajon Rondo, J.R. Smith, guys that have won titles, Danny Green. So they have been in this type of environment where everything's about winning the title. So they won't have any problems, I think, clicking it on. But can they get that rhythm back that they had before this obviously the pandemic? I don't know. It remains to be seen. But they do have the best player in the world who seems very motivated and ready to go. So I'm interested to see it, but it's going to take some time. That first couple of weeks could be tough for the Lakers.
And fortunately for them, they've earned the 1 seed already, essentially, so they don't have to play great in the restart. I know if they lose that first game against the Clippers, again, everyone will act like that is the biggest story in the world. Lakers now 1-3 against the Clippers. I don't know how much that game's going to matter for either of those teams. But to me, if you look at this dispassionately, if there wasn't a level of LeBron James derangement syndrome in certain corners of the media where you try to reverse engineer a way to discredit whatever his accomplishments have been or whatever future accomplishments would be, we would all be in agreement that if we're ranking the teams who were most adversely affected by the season stopping, the Lakers are number 1. They were playing their best basketball of the season. Their best player, LeBron, had been the best player in the league for 2 consecutive months. They were healthy, unlike other teams. And I'm going to harp on this. Home court advantage in the NBA matters. Any team that was going to beat them was potentially going to have to win a Game 7 on LeBron James's floor. A guy who hasn't lost a Game 7 since 2008, a game when he scored 45. Antoine, I don't know if you were on that you weren't still on that Celtics team, but it was against the Celtics in, I think, 2008. Like the idea that the Lake, and by the way, of all the contenders, Avery Bradley's the only one that's a starter on a top flight contender that we know is out of this thing. Everything that could have happened to work against the Lakers Wilds, to me, is already happening. If they do win it's why the asterisk conversation is such an absurdity. If they win the title, they will have done it with a far greater degree of difficulty, Kevin, than they otherwise were going to have to deal with under non-pandemic circumstances.
Well, it's the same with the Bucks, right? They're all going through the same stuff. But, Nick, I'll throw it back to you. They've got the number 1 seed. When would Nick Wright's worry meter, when would the hand start going through the hair of those first 8 games? You lose 1, okay. You lose 2, when do you start to get nervous and you see the Trailblazers sneaking up and Dame, here comes Dame, looking to make a name for himself again, knocking big teams out. When would you get nervous?
When would I be nervous? So you weren't with the show yet, but this was in 2018. This was Jenna's constant question.
Yeah.
Like, when am I finally going to be nervous that the Cavs aren't going to make the
Every
finals?
day I asked him.
And she thought she had me when they were down 3-2 to the Celtics in a series they didn't have home court advantage. And I told Jenna then, and I will tell you now, here's when I'll be worried. When they're down double digits in the 4th quarter of an elimination game. That's when I'll be worried about the Lakers.
Oh, my goodness.
They're
0-8, you're not worried?
See that. What, say it again?
If they were 0-8 going into the playoffs.
Oh, they're not going to be 0-8 going into the playoffs, and they're not going to have any trouble, Antoine, with any of the first-round matchups. Now, I will tell you this, Jenna, I do think if the Rockets move up to the 4-5, I think that's a tough matchup for the Lakers. And I think the Rockets are a team that has benefited immensely from the rest because Russ and Harden, after such a high workload, get time off. So that could be a tougher round 2 matchup than I anticipate. But if they're healthy, physically and virus-wise, I'm not going to be too concerned, Jenna.
Antoine, I've known Nick a long time. I mean, there's stress and then there's really stress. Nick seems really stressed out about the Lakers, and I don't know if he deeply feels it or he wants to sort of set up a little padding for himself should they come out of the gate and lose a couple of games, and he can say, see, I told you so. You don't seem nearly as concerned, even though they're missing Avery Bradley, maybe even Dwight. You don't seem nearly as concerned about their restart as he is.
No, because LeBron James is taking care of his body. We know that he's done the right things in this pandemic to get himself together. AD's probably either 110%. He was probably 100%. He's 110% now. And I like that veteran leadership. I think their focus is totally different than some of these other teams that are out there. It's championship, but nothing for them. So I just believe that their focus is just a little bit different. And the veterans they got on their team, the Danny Greens, the Rondos, the J.R. Smiths, those guys understand the importance of what LeBron's trying to accomplish, and that's trying to win his 4th title, and they'll be ready to go. They just need to win a couple of games, so they'll still be able to catch their rhythm. They need to win a couple games to ensure the number 1 seed, And then after that, they can get focused. They're going to have maybe an easy first round matchup, and then the second and third rounds are going to be very difficult to get to the finals.
Just to be very clear here, put a pin in it. I'm not worried. I have, before the season, mid-season, right after the stoppage, and right now, Lakers over Bucks in 6 is the pick. It's always been the pick, and I won't waver from it. So it's not a level of concern. It is, and Wilds, to steal a phrase from you, it is my commitment to take integrity that I must convey to the audience that if we are ranking teams that have been most adversely affected by the stoppage, the Lakers and the Bucks are at the top because they earned the most, and where the Lakers have been more adverse